When Buddhism was offered to me, I was in a major world of stress. And people that would come to me would say, why do you stay in this environment, in this situation? And my answer was, I have no way of getting out of this situation at the moment. No place to go, no way of thinking how to get there because I had children and all. And then finally someone came and they said, why don't you try chanting? I said, what's chanting? I didn't see there was any sin involved. I looked up the words that I was saying. I couldn't at the time really learn, but I felt, well, it must be good and clean. It's just basically Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Give me the strength and the knowledge to how to go forward and pass this time in my life. It made sense to me. So I felt like religions are related. It doesn't matter what country. It just matters, what matters that you're saying different words, but it all works one way. So I took it like that. I continued to do the Lord's Prayer, and then I started to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I continue that in my life. So what took care of me as a child of the Lord's Prayer continued, and also I moved on to another level, another tongue of getting to that place inside of me that helps me make right decisions, helps me live a more peaceful and happy life. For thine is the kingdom forever and ever.
So that is a very short clip, and this is the first trusting the truth of our suffering is the gateway to allow me to start this series on the Four Noble Truths, and this is just the first of them. And I wanted to include this clip, as I said, about Tina Turner, because she was the person who introduced me to Buddhism. And I want to ask y'all, how many of you knew that Tina Turner was a Buddhist? I see a few people. How many of you first learned that Tina Turner was a Buddhist from the old film, What's Love Got to Do with It? The people know? That was how I learned of it, and What's Love Got to Do with It. So for those who haven't seen the film, I won't spoil it other than to say that the film portrays Tina Turner's story of survival and resilience and finding one's voice after immense suffering, and it contains deeply violent and graphic scenes that remain difficult to watch even in a world now that seems to seek to desensitize us from trauma. So I wanted to say that, like, the movie was really profound, but it included scenes of trauma that maybe, now with everything that happens on the news, our senses are so flooded with stories of suffering that perhaps hers wouldn't seem, too crazy, but to me it still does, and I think maybe to a lot of us in this room who are deeply impacted by the news of war, the news of mass violence, the news of political turmoil affecting millions of people, and sometimes more painfully, the silenced suffering of those who are unseen, those who are enduring private home challenges as Tina Turner was, some folks who are enduring the unseen sufferings of human trafficking, maybe those experiencing medical neglect and harm, unseen sufferings of unsheltered individuals who navigate the world unnoticed. The magnitude of suffering in the world is staggering, but unfortunately, none of it is really new. Suffering is a part of the human condition. Suffering is something that we all encounter, whether through personal trials, collective grief, or the weight of injustice. But in the face of suffering and difficulty, the question is, where do you turn? How do you trust that in the midst of all that there is, that well-being is possible? How can we hold suffering in a way that allows us to move towards wisdom and not despair. This morning, as I said, I'm beginning the worship series exploring the Four Noble Truths, the foundational teachings of the Buddha. And the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha, is often translated as suffering. But it also encompasses stress, dissatisfaction, and the inevitable discomforts of life. This first noble truth is the truth that to live life is to experience loss, impermanence, and difficulty. At first glance, this might seem discouraging, and y'all might be like, geez, Ian, I didn't come to church to hear about suffering. I mean, you know. But the fact of it, at least the perspective that I'm offering, is that it's a profound invitation asking, how do you meet? How can we meet suffering? Not with avoidance, not with despair, but from a place of knowing that perhaps that there is wisdom that is offering and an invitation to trust that well-being is possible, even when we are in the midst of pain. I began this time of reflection on Tina Turner because of her journey of overcoming the suffering, her journey of overcoming suffering. And as I said, she was the one who introduced me to Buddhism when I was in my place of suffering. Through chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which I don't think she really clearly said that what it's about is trusting the wisdom of the universe, trusting that the cause and effect that is included. So I'll just say Nam means trust. Myoho is trust in the faith of cause and effect, the law of cause and effect of the universe. That's what Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is essentially saying. I trust in the wisdom that is provided in the law of cause and effect. And they often connect this to the lotus flower because the lotus flower both seeds and flowers simultaneously. So it's kind of an example of cause and effect. So all of that is contained together in that chant. And through that, she found profound strength, clarity, and peace, even in her place of struggle. Her story was a testament of how spiritual practice can sustain us in difficult times. And it was a part of my inspiration to learn more about Buddhism and eventually begin my own practice. I was told in that time of me learning of a story, one that speaks to the nature of suffering, acceptance, and transformation. It's an ancient story of Kisa Gautami, a woman who suffered unimaginable grief when her only child died. In her desperation, she carried her child's body from house to house, begging for someone to bring him back to life. Finally, she was directed to the Buddha, who told her that he could help if she could gather a handful of mustard seeds from someone who had never known death. Hopeful, which would have been even hard to muster, a sense of hope that I can find someone, she went door to door asking for mustard seeds. And at every home, she was met with kindness, but also with sorrow, because each household had lost a loved one, either a parent, a spouse, or a child of their own. Slowly, she began to realize that suffering was not hers alone. It was a part of the human experience. Then she returned to the Buddha, no longer asking for her child's life to be restored. Instead, she asked to learn the path of wisdom and liberation. In recognizing that her suffering was shared, she found the first steps towards healing. So what's the point of me sharing this story in these times? I believe that many of us, often unknowingly, are suffering because we are trying to restore life to a dead situation, or misplacing hope because of our understandable attachment to what was supposed to be. I won't name specific examples, but I invite each of you to consider, what dead situation might you be carrying around, suffering with, hoping for a miracle to change it, when peace actually lies in accepting as is? This is the heart of the first noble truth. It tells us that suffering, or dukkha, is an inevitable part of life, that we lose loved ones, we experience disappointment, illness, and injustice. No one is exempt from pain, but in a culture that often seeks to avoid discomfort, we may struggle to accept the reality of our suffering. Many try to distract ourselves, numb ourselves, or convince ourselves that if maybe we were just stronger, just better, maybe we would not struggle. Yet the first noble truth does not judge suffering, it simply names it. The Unitarian Universalist minister and Buddhist practitioner James Ishmael Ford writes, quote, "The practice is to be present with what is, with a soft and open heart, to lean into the discomfort and see what it has to teach us," end quote. In acknowledging dukkha, we are not giving in to despair. We are practicing a radical kind of truth-telling, one that allows us to meet life as it is and move forward with greater honesty, depth, and care. When we deny that suffering is a part of life, it can control us and keep us in a cycle of, I have to fix it, I have to fix it, we have to fight harder, we got to do more, when sometimes being with the reality is realizing that this suffering is not all of life. It is a part of life. When I came into Buddhism, I had heard that the first noble truth was described as life is suffering, period. That all of life is inescapable of suffering. And that was deeply troubling to accept. But as a new Buddhist, I tried. This nihilistic view of life was at first oddly comforting because it made it easier to expect pain and hardship and be pleasantly surprised when things went well, right? But one day, when I was still in my early years of chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, I experienced a profound personal breakthrough in the middle of my chanting. I had a vision of myself essentially doing exactly what I'm doing now as a minister. But at the time, I was in the military in Korea as a war planner. Every day I planned war, and we practiced it every day. Can you imagine the suffering of living literally in a cycle of war and planning war and all of the harm that goes with, and then doing it over and over and having exercises? I was stuck in this feeling of suffering, and I couldn't imagine, how could I get out? Like Tina Turner, I don't have kids, but this was my job. How could I get out? And then here I am in this experience of basically praying, and I had this clear vision that was so sure to me, and I felt such peace and joy that I knew in my bones that all of life could not be suffering, because right here in my deepest pain, I touched peace. The vision was so clear and so deep that I knew well-being was possible. So I ask, in times when the media makes us feel like all of life is suffering, what do you turn to remind you that there is more? I know one congregant said that they disconnected from most news sources and started back gardening. Another started a practice of journaling their gratitude as the good news. Hearing about that journaling practice reminded me of a poem that I'm going to share to close us out of this time. This poem is by Thich Nhat Hanh, and some of you might have heard it. He wrote, "The good news, they do not print. The good news we print. We have a special edition every moment, and we need you to read it. The good news is that you are alive, that the linden tree is still there, standing firm from the harsh winter. The good news is that you have wonderful eyes to touch the blue sky. The good news is that there is a child there before you, and your arms are available. Hugging is possible. They only print what is wrong. Let us look at our special editions. We always offer things that are not wrong, and we want you to benefit from them and help protect them. The dandelion is there by the sidewalk, smiling its wondrous smile, singing the song of eternity. Listen, you have ears to hear it. Bow your head and listen to it. Leave behind the world of sorrow, the preoccupation, and get free. The latest good news is that you can do it. In this closing, I also add that Buddhist minister Reverend Zenju Earthland Manuel, who was a teacher of mine, a Zen Buddhist teacher of mine, reminds us that liberation is not outside of suffering. Liberation is in meeting suffering with a heart that can hold it, examine it, and respond with compassion. The first noble truth is not a condemnation, it is an invitation. It does not say that life is only suffering, but that suffering is real, universal, and worthy of attention. And in this, we find the first step towards liberation. May we have the courage to meet suffering with openness, to accept reality without despair, and to trust that even in pain, peace is possible. May it be so.